Hello everyone, welcome to Marketing Research MR2300. My name is Paul Tilley, and today we're going to look at a very early stage in the marketing research process, exploratory research. The purpose of exploratory research is to identify and help qualify the problem that we will address in our research. Exploratory research is designed to kind of help us frame the issue, to understand the underpinnings, to give us some background. In this particular unit, we're looking at some of the tools that are used in order to conduct good exploratory research. Last time we saw that the marketing research process is indeed a process that has a number of steps to it. The initial stages of this process requires us to get a good understanding of the problem before we actually try to solve the problem. This understanding of the problem is achieved through conducting something called exploratory research. Exploratory research doesn't help finish the thing, it helps start the thing. The idea is that exploratory will give us some background, give us some understanding of the basic causes and effects. It will not solve the problem, but it will certainly do a good job towards defining the problem. In this video, we're going to take a look at a few things that exploratory research does and how it's done. Let's just take a look. First, we're going to describe and define exploratory research. Then, we're going to explain how exploratory research is important to defining the research problem. Further, we'll explain why we conduct exploratory research, and we'll distinguish between qualitative and quantitative research. Qualitative research is primarily used as an exploratory research tool, whereas quantitative research usually involves numbers and is more focused on actual problem-based research. Next, we'll discuss the categories of qualitative research, and we'll discuss the common techniques used in exploratory research, namely case studies, focus groups, depth interviews, and free association or projective techniques. As you'll recall from last week, the marketing research process has 6 major steps. First, we have to look at the problem discovery and definition. The problem discovery and definition is trying to extend our understanding so that we know exactly what the problem is, the elements surrounding the problem, not necessarily potential solutions, but places to look for solutions. Exploratory research is absolutely critical at this stage, particularly not very well defined. So if we don't exactly know what we're looking for, exploratory research is essential. Let's now take a look at exactly what is meant by exploratory research. Exploratory research is initial research. It is right at the front end of any research process, and it's conducted to clarify and define the nature of the problem. It's not going to provide us conclusive evidence. We are not going to have the answer once we do this. We are, however, going to have the questions. So subsequent research is certainly desired and requested in order to take our understanding further. There are 4 basic categories of qualitative research. The first is a philosophy-based category known as Phenomenology. That's a hard one to pronounce. What we're looking there for is phenomena. So we're relying on discovery of how a person is shaped by their physical environment, the phenomena of the physical environment, the objects and the people and the situations. And really it seeks to describe and reflect upon their experiences within that situation. Many research projects, for example, ask people how they felt, what they think, how they react in a given situation. That's known as phenomenology. We also look at a different type of qualitative research known as ethnography. Now what we're looking at with ethnography is the idea of looking at the ethnic or the cultural based philosophies and inputs of an individual. What are some of the things that affects how they deal? So it relies on studying the culture and how a person interacts with that culture. And from that, what we're trying to gather is what is their situation and how is that impacting their thought process. Thirdly, we're looking at something called grounded theory. And what grounded theory is, it's a sociology-based type research where we're looking at asking respondents to elaborate on their responses, or elaborate on historical records, or elaborate on the things that they have told us. And we're getting an idea there of what's driving the respondent. We're really digging deeper. The idea of grounded theory then is to dig deeper into someone's thought process. Finally, case studies are a very important category of qualitative research. What we're looking at there is presenting a situation and learning from that situation. So the case study is there to obtain information from one or several situations and find out how people dealt in those situations, and were the results of that good, bad, or improvable. So looking at these various tools in between phenomenology, ethnography, grounded theory, and case studies, talking to respondents, we get a better understanding of the problem. And that way we can better define the problem. That's the major purpose behind that. Exploratory researchers have a toolbox of useful tools they can use in order to get the information they need. Case studies, focus groups, in-depth interviews, and free association techniques are often used in order to gather such data. Next, we're going to take a look at each of those in turn. The case study method is often used because what it does is it allows us to look at a very similar situation that has happened in the past and learn from it. So the idea is that a case study presents a situation and it describes how the situation was created, how the situation evolved, and normally how the situation was resolved. So if the situation is similar enough in terms of the case study, then people could presumably take the learnings from the first case and apply it to the second case. That's the idea behind it. Case studies are really good for getting in-depth information, and it allows for a careful studying of how people react, how people reacted, and how people potentially could react. Case studies require a lot of cooperation from respondents. They have to be able to give you their true feelings. They have to be able to sometimes give information that's often sensitive. So in order for a case study to work, you really need to have an open discussion with someone, and the someone who you're looking for as the case needs to be able to give that information. In the notes, you'll notice that I have put up a case, a video case, Dean Simon, Pine Tree Recreation Resort. I want you to take a look at that. That's a useful video that describes a young man in Stephenville, Newfoundland, who tried to start a ski hill. Look at some of the issues. What did we learn from those issues? What would we suggest to Dean to do things differently? How would you react in such a similar situation? The Dean Simon case study makes for a good learning opportunity for us as students. So take a look at that. Another common tool that's used in exploratory research is the focus group. The focus group is essentially a group of people that come together at a table or electronically, and there is a moderator there who leads a discussion, and that discussion is made up of probing questions and building thoughts that allows for the group to share their thoughts with regards to some particular item. Focus groups tend to be unstructured, they tend to be free-flowing, and they tend to be group-oriented, meaning that we have about 6 to 10 people at a table. What we do in a focus group is use what's called the funnel technique. Funnel techniques mean we start with a very broad topic or a broad idea. Once we do that, then we dig and dig and dig, so we eventually narrow it down to a particular question or a particular point, and people can focus on an idea. Ideas expressed by one person are often built upon by another person. This is known as piggybacking. And the idea there is that we will get better and more well-defined responses when one person can learn or build on the thoughts of another. The moderator plays an absolutely essential role in the focus group. The moderator's job is to control the discussion. And it's a loose control, nonetheless, but it has to keep the discussion focused on what it is the focus group came together to discuss. The idea behind the focus group being loose is that it would allow for stimulation and free flow of discussion. So if it becomes too scripted, the focus group won't work. So it's a fine balance between keeping the focus group focused on a particular topic and keeping it so focused that the free flow of information just doesn't happen. The idea behind a focus group lasting a little while, it can take 2 or 3 hours, is that a rapport eventually gets developed between the members of the group, the moderator, and they get comfortable in the situation, so they're more open and more sharing, and one person is more apt to build upon the thoughts of another. So it's important that a focus group be long enough and have enough people, not too many, 6 to 10, in order to get this good census so that we can get the most information out of it. Listening is very important, and the moderator's role is to listen intently, not really to have a direct role in the discussion, but to listen to the discussion. The moderator, or potentially a moderator's helper, will also record the discussion to get people's views and to make sure that is well documented so later on this can be analyzed. So essentially the focus group then is a very useful tool. Sometimes focus groups can be done online. Now online has some advantages. It's a lot less expensive, and it allows for a higher degree of anonymity because nobody sees one another. However, they also come with some challenges in the sense that technology doesn't necessarily work well. The technology could also lead to people not being as engaged as they would in a normal focus group. So regardless of the type of tool that's used, be it at a table or electronically, it's important that the moderator focus the group with regards to the discussion, and the discussion be free-flowing enough in order to yield useful information. Another tool that's often used in terms of the toolkit for exploratory research is in-depth interviews, or conversations they're often called. The in-depth interview, or the depth interview as is described in the textbook, the depth interview involves interviewing specific people. Normally these depth interviews have people who are experts, or people who have some great deal of knowledge that they can share in order to be able to help address any potential problems and find that problem. One of the things, the common techniques with this type of approach is that it starts with open-ended questions. We ask questions that encourage people to talk. As they talk, we record that, and later or during, we can interpret and seek a greater clarification on each of the points. In terms of the exploratory research, the depth interview is designed to kind of really pinpoint what are some of the problems that we should be addressing in our research, and how should we go about moving our research forward in an effective, efficient manner. A fourth major type of exploratory research technique is the projective technique. And when we think about projective techniques, what we're doing is projecting people's ideas. We can use any number of tools to do that, and we're going to look at several here now. The first one is the word association test. And as you can see on the graphic, when I were to say the word green, I'm trying to get people to relate what they think of when I say the word green. Some people, for example, could say money. Others could say lawn or grass. And others can say eggs and ham, green eggs and ham. Now, even though it may not seem like it's giving us much useful information, what we're testing here is what is at top of people's mind. What is the thought that comes out of their head first whenever we say something? So if we're a company like McDonald's, and the word that we use, the word for word association was McDonald's, people will give us top of mind of what McDonald's means to them. Good, cheap, healthy, unhealthy. These are all words that would come out that we could use in order to interpret what people think about that word or that topic. Another projective technique is the sentence completion method. And you'll see on the slide, here's an example of sentence completion. People who drink beer are. A man who drinks light beer is. Imported beer is most liked by. A woman will drink beer when. What we do is we ask each of the respondents to answer that question with the first thought that came to their mind. And we can then start to draw pictures of what people think based on, in this particular case, beer. For example, people who drink beer are. If the overwhelming response was positive, nice people, pleasant people, normal people, these sorts of things, and if that would indicate that beer has a pretty positive perspective in people's minds. If the overwhelming response was negative, people who drink beer are lazy. If the people who drink beer are unemployed, if these sorts of things, then that would suggest a negative response to that word and that product. Yet another projective technique is the role play. Role plays are used a lot in school. You may have completed a role play yourself. And that's effectively where you step into the character of someone and you portray that person and some event. Now, if the role play is if it's scripted, it's pretty straightforward that you just say the lines. But the idea behind a role play in our sense, in terms of this exploratory research, is you get someone to play the role in an unscripted format. You set some basic ground rules. You know, you're a buyer and you've come into a store and you're going to complain. That sort of thing. But the response that you get is purely unscripted, and it will tell you what the person's innermost feelings are of the product or service or idea that they're discussing. So they basically are no longer themselves, they are in the role. And the role allows them to speak much more freely of the product or idea or the circumstance. And you can learn a lot from that. The final type of approach that we looked at here with regards to projective techniques is the thematic aptitude test. You may have heard of the ink block test. What a thematic aptitude test does is it effectively shows a person or an individual or a woman, a man, a child, a picture. And the picture is not really a defined picture. In fact, it could be an ink blot. And what we're doing is asking them to interpret what they see in the picture. The general idea here is that people will reveal their innermost thoughts when prompted by some given picture. They might see different things in the picture, they might interpret it very differently, but their interpretations will give us information and ideas with regards to some of the things that we're talking about here, and give us ideas with regards to some of the potential issues that we'd be looking at in our research. So the thematic aptitude test requires highly skilled individuals, but on the other hand, it can yield some useful information. So as you can see in this chapter, in this unit, exploratory information is very useful for us in order to help us define the problem. There's all kinds of tools and all kinds of techniques which are used in order to gather that exploratory information. Essentially, though, exploratory information allows us to kind of frame up our problem that we need to study in our marketing research. It's a very early stage and it's designed to clarify. That's it for this week. If you have any questions or any concerns, please don't hesitate to call me, paul.tilley@cna.nl.ca, or within the course website. Thanks a lot. Have a great week.